I want to watch this video. It's not even long, 7 minutes long. The absurd lengths that billionaires go to not live in NYC. Because my understanding is that many people claim to live in a place like Puerto Rico. Let's say Logan Paul. But they don't actually live there. They spend way more of their time not there. But they have a lot of tricks they can do to pretend they are living in a low tax place so that they can not pay income tax. And I know for a fact that many billionaires want to live in New York City because that's where all their business is done. But they don't want to pay the taxes. So they find a way to spend a certain number of days on record outside of the city. I would love to hear the specifics. I don't know the specifics, and I'm sure this video can help break them down. You do this, by the way? I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, wait. Excuse me? Please clarify how I do this. I would love to know. How do I do this? LA streamer? What do you mean? You think I'm not paying LA taxes? Pull down the green screen? I take down the green screen. I'm in fucking the Cayman Islands. No! What is the tax rate in Clancyville? It's 99% on the poor and 0.1% on the wealthy and negative 12% on Clancy himself. He actually earns money from taxes. The more money he has, the higher percentage of revenue he gets. Too high on the wealthy? I mean, I don't want to say it, but I agree. They're the job creators. It's kind of up that like we would tax the wealthy at all. Do you know what I'm saying? I feel like we tax them with our boorish presence. I feel like just being around them in our lower class air is a tax on their mental. We have to take their money too. It's fucking crazy. I feel bad for them. Don't say our big bro, you're not in the club. It's true. I'm not in your club. When I said our, I was talking about my fellow millionaires who feel bad about billionaires. I definitely wasn't talking about yours. 100%. Still, I feel mogged, you know? Anyway, let's watch this video and then we can...
For you on November 16th. What about your teddy bear? Be careful. If the answer is New York City, it could cost you millions. That's because the plush whereabouts of billionaires as plush bears and trouts are one of many things New York's 300+ residency auditors use to prove who does and doesn't owe New York taxes. And from 2013 to 2017 alone, these auditors pulled in $1 billion in revenue for the state. So what tricks do people use to avoid New York's sky-high taxes? And how do auditors call their bluff? To find out, we're going to focus on Miss Priscilla Pennyworth, a woman I've made up who, is getting audited. See, New York residents pay New York taxes on every dollar they earn everywhere that year, while non-residents only get taxed on income earned unequivocally in New York. Ms. Pennyworth's $3 billion annual salary is just $500 million less per year than Michael Bloomberg's, and she would owe over $325 million in state income taxes as a resident. But she says she lives at her mansion in Florida, where there are no personal income taxes. For uber wealthies like her, a residency audit is like a colonoscopy. Law firms that handle them call them, quote, difficult, intrusive, and document intensive, and publish documents like New York residency audits, keys to preventing a nightmare. Meanwhile, the state has published this handy 107-pager detailing their protocol, which my writer—
I just want to be clear that, like, if you make $3.5 billion a year in income, your tax process should be painful. There should be some stress there. There should be some auditing. There should not be like, trust me, because you have such a gargantuan incentive. Every percentage you are able to underpay is millions of dollars.
To keep her $325 million, Ms. Pennyworth needs to prove to auditors that New York is not her place of domicile and that she isn't a, quote, statutory resident. In normal speak, that New York isn't her home vibrationally and or that she doesn't spend enough time there to owe taxes. New York, for their part, is determined to systematically poke holes in her I live in Florida story, starting with the domicile thing. Per New York, you might live in multiple places, but you have one home or domicile, proven by actions, not voter registration, driver's license, etc. There are 5 primary factors they evaluate, and the first is your home. There are a few ways to judge this. They might determine Priscilla's New York penthouse is her domicile if it's the largest, most valuable, or most subjectively homey property in her portfolio. On the other hand, if it's sparsely furnished, mostly being used by others, or for sale, they might believe—
So if you're a billionaire who wants to work in New York, but pretend it's not your home, you need to have a shithole? You need to have a shithole place that you can show. You need to live like Asmongold. What if Asmongold's thing is an elaborate way to avoid taxes, dude? He puts the roaches out on purpose so that it can't be his legal residence.
And yes, the auditors will visit your home, all your homes if they can. So if you're really worried, set some booby traps. The second main factor is, quote, active business involvement. Priscilla spends a lot of time in Florida, but she still runs Priscilla's Pet Purses in New York, often in person. And she's also on the board of the Met and comes in for their—
She made $3.5 billion running Priscilla's Pet Purses. The story's getting hard to believe.
Meanwhile, in Florida, her only real business is remote work for Pet Purses and going to Disney. If you're an auditor, that smells like a New York domicile. But no single factor can prove or disprove domicile, so we continue to 3. Time. Priscilla may only spend 5 months a year in New York, but does she spend more time anywhere else? A couple months in Florida, summering in the Riviera, skiing in Davos, visiting her kids, her parents, safari. It can sure look like New York is her main place. This isn't an absolute rule. If you live in Jersey but commute in for work and frequently stay in an apartment in the city during the week, you've got a good case that Jersey is your domicile anyway. Factor 4 is known as the teddy bear test, phrased as items near and dear. See, Priscilla's family photo albums, childhood teddy bear, current dog, an entire collection of Renaissance paintings with weird babies are still in her penthouse. The taxation department believes you'll keep most of your favorite things in your domicile. If she'd paid an insured carrier to bring all that stuff to Florida, it would indicate to auditors that she'd really moved. But she didn't. Everything she brought to Florida came in a U-Haul, a red flag to auditors that you don't really care about it at all. The last factor is family connections. Basically, where do your spouse and kids live? But
I mean, this is what Jeff Bezos did. So Jeff Bezos made all of his money in Washington for Amazon, in Seattle specifically, billions of dollars in stock. But when he wanted to sell it, he decided he would go to Florida. So he moved to Florida and said it was to be closer to his dad. He did this whole song and dance about needing to be closer to his dad, and his dad was there, and he moved out, and all the things to check all the boxes that it was a real move. He said it was not for tax reasons. And then after getting it confirmed 8 months later, he sells a bunch of stock. Surprise, surprise. What a shocker. He sells billions of dollars of stock and pays way less taxes. What an unlucky coincidence.
Once a wealthy couple claimed they lived, respectively, in New Jersey and St. Croix, auditors noticed that their kids went to school in New York City, and the mailing address the school had on file to reach the parents was their place in New York. Checkmate. They don't pry too deeply into your family beyond that, but if Priscilla were to have an ailing relative that she moved to Florida to be with, she could make that part of her case. Most likely, the auditors would find that Priscilla was, in fact, domiciled in New York and collect her taxes. But if they didn't, they could still prove she was a statutory resident if she kept a place to live in New York in that tax year and/or spent more than half of the year there. Keeping a place means what they call a permanent place of abode, i.e. somewhere inhabitable, even if not inhabited, by you for at least 10 months of the year. So a heatless cabin in the woods that you could only use in the summer, an apartment under renovation, or a place you rent out to a stranger who wouldn't let you stay the night if you asked, not permanent places of abode. In 1991 and 1992, Martha Stewart tried to claim residency in Connecticut because her house in the Hamptons was uninhabitable due to renovations, but failed because there were pictures of the place looking inhabitable as heck in her magazine, she had an active cable subscription there, and her author bio in a book published that year said, quote, Miss Stewart lives in Connecticut.
Dude, it's weird that Martha Stewart is like the long history of the one rich person that the system will punish. Why does she get all the lumps, dude? She does the most minor insider trading, goes to jail. She's the one they crack down on. She's the public face of... I don't get it. She's not in the club, dude.
The other part of statutory residency comes down to what's called the 184-day rule. If you spend more than half of the days of the year in New York...
They expect one of us in the wreckage. Fucking Bane-ass motherfucker. Some hedge fund manager saying that while pushing Martha Stewart back into the plane.
You're a statutory resident, with a day being any calendar day where you spent a single minute in New York, with exceptions for inpatient medical care and pass-through travel. Auditors will assume you were in New York on any day you can't prove otherwise via flight records, credit card or phone use, toll charges, established patterns, or any other hard-ish evidence. One man, Julian Robertson, got a residency audit for the year 2000, and if they found him to be a New Yorker, he'd owe almost $27 million.
Jesus.
He'd left parties by midnight Cinderella style to make sure he was out of the city before the next day started, flew into the city but slept in the suburbs before coming back the next day at 6 a.m. to avoid counting the travel day, and had his assistant keep fastidious track of his days. For 4 of those days in particular, auditors argued he would have to go to ridiculous lengths to avoid the city, but he proved that he was, in fact, ridiculous and got to keep his $27 million.
That's so It's so stupid. It's so stupid. It's such a gamed system, bro. You're obviously doing business in New York. He's writing the exact line with records that, again, you know, come down to his assistant's notes, which can be faked.
These days, you don't need an assistant to track your days. There are apps out there to record your daily whereabouts, warn you when you're nearing 184, and provide third-party proof of it all to auditors. Yes, there's a whole industry around helping rich people avoid accidentally owing New York taxes. One of those law firms that handle these audits provides a list of tips like not filing for certain tax credits and exemptions, and not suspiciously claiming to change your domicile on January 1st, which
Monitor your days. If your New York day count gets close to 183 in the middle of December, then for the remainder of the year, work or vacation outside of New York if possible.
You can also take matters into your own hands. Like, you can schedule your private jet to land in New York just after midnight to cut a day. Life hack! At this point, it seems, state residency audits are the only thing we, the people, have that make billionaires sweat. So here's my idea. The state starts a day tracking app, charging $20 million a year to use it, billionaires still save money and pay to use it, and we send the cash to the MTA to extend all the trains. Just a thought.
Interesting.
And here's another thought. You should check out this video's sponsor.
Oh, yeah, interesting. I guess I didn't learn too much new, but it is fascinating. Do you think Jalen Brunson does that? Yeah, I assume so. Well, I don't know if he doesn't live there. Probably very hard for a professional basketball player in New York to claim he doesn't live in New York. He probably does other things, you know? At what point is it on New York for having such high taxes? Here's the thing. Even under your line of logic, these people are free to not do business in New York if they think taxes are too high. If they would like to conduct their business entirely in Florida and not pay New York taxes, that's fine. However, what they are doing is still doing all their business and living in New York, but cheating it so they're not paying New York taxes. That is the problem. They would like the benefits that are accrued to New York being a financial hub, but they don't want the costs that go into maintaining that. That is the up part particularly. For example, if Logan Paul really wants to conduct all his business in Puerto Rico, fine. But it's very hard for him to do collabs or run his podcast or all the things he actually makes money with from Puerto Rico because no one goes out there. So he pretends that he lives in Puerto Rico so he can pay Puerto Rico taxes. But in fact, he has all his time in LA. So he is just stealing from LA's communal benefits, but not contributing in. That is the argument here. That's why it's so shitty. Logan wouldn't do that. Not my Pookie, not my Paulie. Funny because we know you're streaming from Cape Town right now and green screened your Cali bedroom. It is funny to imagine that I would green screen my bedroom, which could technically be anywhere. That's why I have this ostentatious Lakers symbol right here to pretend I'm in LA. But wait, why am I pretending I'm in LA? That doesn't even make sense. The point of the taxes would be to pretend I'm elsewhere, but still be in LA. That's the dodging. It doesn't make sense to pretend I'm in LA. I'm trying to pay more. Maybe I am. I'm a hero. I'm trying to pay more. I'm trying to game the system so I pay the highest tax rate. Sue me, you know? Pretend you're in LA so you don't have to pay New York taxes. I don't know which taxes are higher, LA or New York. My guess would be LA. I could check it out, I guess. What states have the highest tax rate? It might be New York, dude. 4.4, 3.7. Yeah, it's New York. I guess this is average. I mean, you know, it could be different for the wealthiest, but this is the average tax burden is highest in New York. Texas has no taxes. State income taxes they don't have. Obviously, you still have to pay your federal income tax. But yeah, Texas, Florida, Nevada, no state income tax, which is why most of the streamers fled there to these places or claim to be in these places while spending all their time in California. Florida currently trying to eliminate property taxes as well. Yeah, I heard about this. So like a state like Texas has very low income tax, but higher property taxes, which can work. I mean, there's benefits in that they don't have some of the problems that California has with housing where we have zero property taxes. People get stuck in the same house forever. But Florida doing neither means it'll just be taxes on, I guess, consumption. So regular people buying shit, they just won't be funded. I mean, I assume Florida's got a pretty big deficit, if I had to guess. Florida is currently facing projected budget deficits, estimating a $2.8 billion deficit in 2026 and a $6.9 billion in 2027. Cool. Good for them. That doesn't sound that bad. It doesn't sound that bad because you've gotten used to America's budget deficit. But for a state, that's bad. That's the deficit of some countries. Yeah. California's bigger economy than Japan, just to be clear. And I assume Florida's probably top 15. Florida economy versus countries. Yeah, I mean, Florida's economy is bigger than Spain or Mexico on its own. Isn't California like top 10? California's number 4. It goes America, China, Germany, California, Japan. And America would still be number 1 if you cut out California, by the way. This is only by GDP though, not by purchasing power parity, which would have China at number 1, America at number 2, everything else in the same order.